Leora had always been curious. Ever since she could remember, she had loved exploring the wild forests near her village. While other children stayed close to home, she ventured farther every day. Her parents often warned her about the dangers, but Leora knew the forests were full of secrets. Secrets she wanted to discover. That morning, the sky was painted with soft shades of orange and pink. Birds sang from the treetops, and the air smelled fresh with dew. Leora tightened the strap of her bag, which carried a few tools, a notebook, and some herbs she had collected earlier. Today, she wanted to find the rare blue moss that grew near the cliffs. As she climbed the rocky path leading to the cliff's edge, she noticed something unusual. The forest below was silent. Even the birds had stopped singing. Leora frowned. A strange feeling of unease crept over her. She slowly moved closer to the edge and peered down. Below, in a small clearing, a massive creature struggled. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its body was covered in shiny metallic scales that reflected the sunlight. Powerful wings folded awkwardly against its sides, and its long tail whipped back and forth. But what caught Leora's attention most was the creature's nostrils. One of them had a large, sharp thorn lodged deep inside, and the dragon-like predator was clearly in pain. The creature roared, a sound that shook the leaves on the trees. It slammed its claws into the ground, leaving deep marks. Leora felt a wave of fear, but at the same time she felt something else, a strange pull, as if the creature's pain called for her help. She took a deep breath. "I have to help it," she whispered to herself. She knew this was dangerous, but the thought of the creature's suffering was unbearable. Slowly, she made her way down the cliff path, moving carefully so she wouldn't make a sound. Every step was tense. The dragon turned its head sharply, sniffing the air. Leora froze, holding perfectly still. Its golden eyes glowed, and for a moment, she felt as if it could see right into her soul. But then it went back to struggling, twisting and shaking its massive head. Finally, Leora reached a safe distance. She dropped to the ground, keeping low behind a fallen tree. She pulled out her small knife and a piece of cloth. "I have to be careful," she told herself. "One wrong move and it might attack." The dragon's breath came in sharp, pained huffs. Leora could see the thorn now, thick and jagged, wedged deep inside the nostril. She could almost feel the creature's discomfort. She took another deep breath and stepped closer, slowly, keeping her movements calm and steady. "Easy. I won't hurt you," she whispered softly. Her voice trembled a little, but she tried to sound confident. The dragon's head turned slightly, watching her. Its eyes narrowed, but it did not attack. Leora took this as a sign to continue. She knelt carefully near the thorn and placed the cloth under her hands to protect herself. With one hand, she held the dragon's snout gently but firmly. It flinched once, but she kept talking softly. Then, with the other hand, she grabbed the thorn and pulled it out slowly. The dragon growled, a low warning sound, but it did not strike. When the thorn came free, a drop of dark blood fell to the ground. Leora quickly wrapped it in the cloth. The dragon shook its head, as if testing its relief. Its nostril twitched, and it sniffed the air. Leora held her breath. For a moment, she thought it might attack anyway. But then, the dragon made a soft, low rumble. Not a roar, but something almost like a sigh. Leora smiled. "It's okay now. You're free." She stepped back slightly, unsure what to do next. The dragon's eyes met hers again, and this time there was no anger. There was curiosity. Something intelligent glimmered in its gaze. For several minutes, they simply stared at each other. Leora felt a strange connection, as if the creature understood that she had helped it and that she meant no harm. Slowly, the dragon lowered its head, almost bowing slightly. Leora gasped. Could it be gratitude? She didn't want to push her luck. She slowly stood and backed away, keeping her eyes on the dragon. To her surprise, it did not move. It stayed still, watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. Then, without warning, a loud noise echoed from the forest. A branch snapped underfoot. The dragon's ears twitched, and it turned its head sharply. Leora's stomach sank. Was it going to attack her now, or was it responding to the noise? From the trees, a small group of scavenger creatures appeared, wolf-like animals with sharp claws and glowing eyes. They were approaching the dragon, probably thinking it was vulnerable. The dragon growled, a deep rumble that shook the air. Its body tensed, wings spreading slightly, tail coiling like a whip. Leora froze. She realized she had just saved this dragon's life, but now she might need its help herself. She held her ground, hoping it would remember her. The dragon turned slowly to face the scavengers. With a sudden roar, it lunged forward, fangs bared. The scavengers yelped and ran, disappearing into the forest. Leora's heart pounded. She had never seen anything like that. The dragon turned back to her, eyes softening again. It lowered its head slightly, as if acknowledging her presence and her courage. You saved me," Leora whispered. Her voice trembled. "And I think maybe you saved me too." The dragon sniffed her again and gave a low rumble, almost like a growl of approval. Leora smiled, a mixture of relief and awe washing over her. She knew this was just the beginning. Something extraordinary had just happened. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Leora sat near the dragon, carefully observing it. She noticed its scales shimmer in different colors depending on the angle of the light. Its eyes were intelligent and alert. Every movement showed power and grace. She realized that this creature was not just a predator. It was a force of nature, magnificent and strong. Over the next few hours, Leora and the dragon stayed near each other, neither making sudden moves. She offered it some food she had packed, a piece of dried meat. The dragon sniffed it, then took it gently from her hand. Leora laughed softly. She had never imagined feeding a dragon would feel so normal. By late afternoon, Leora knew she had to return to the village. But as she stood to leave, the dragon moved closer, staying near her side. It didn't follow, but it didn't leave either. Leora realized that she had earned its trust, at least for now. Walking back through the forest, Leora couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. She had faced a creature far larger and stronger than herself, and yet, through courage and compassion, she had formed a connection. She realized that in this wild world, humans could survive not just through strength, but through intelligence, empathy, and bravery. By the time she reached her village, the sun was setting. The sky glowed with gold and red, and Leora felt a warmth in her heart. She knew that her life had changed forever. Somewhere out there, in the wild forests, a dragon now trusted her. And somehow, she felt certain that it would not be the last time their paths crossed. That night, as Leora lay in her bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the dragon. She named it Drakkar in her mind, a name strong and fierce, yet proud and noble. She smiled, imagining future adventures, challenges, and discoveries. She had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain: her life, and perhaps the lives of her people, would never be the same again. The forest outside was quiet now. The shadows of trees danced in the moonlight. And somewhere, deep within the wilderness, Drakkar watched and waited. Its loyalty had been earned in a single act of courage, and a bond had been formed that neither time nor danger could break. Leora drifted into sleep with a sense of hope and excitement. Tomorrow, the forest would call again, and she would answer. And when she did, she would not face it alone. The morning sun peeked through the thick canopy of the forest, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Birds chirped cheerfully, and the air was filled with the earthy scent of damp leaves. Leora walked carefully along a narrow path, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement. She carried her small bag of tools and herbs, just as she had the day before, but today she was not alone. Drakkar, the dragon she had helped, followed at a distance. His massive body moved with grace and silence, his scales shimmering in the sunlight. Leora had never seen anything so majestic. Despite his size and strength, he seemed gentle and aware of her presence, stepping lightly so as not to startle her. "Good morning, Drakkar," Leora said softly, glancing back to make sure he was following. He responded with a low rumble, almost like a greeting. She smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. Over the next few hours, Leora explored a hidden valley not far from the cliff where she had first met Drakkar. The valley was lush, filled with tall trees, flowering bushes, and a sparkling stream that twisted through the rocks. It was a place that felt untouched by humans, a secret world of its own. Drakkar moved silently through the trees, watching her closely. Leora was fascinated by him. She had never seen a creature with such intelligence. He didn't just follow her blindly. He seemed to understand her gestures, her pace, and even her mood. At one point, she stopped near a patch of rare herbs growing along the stream. "Look, Drakkar," she said, pointing. "These are the ones I need for my medicines." Drakkar sniffed the air and tilted his head, watching as she carefully collected the herbs. When she accidentally dropped one, he picked it up gently in his claw and nudged it back toward her. Leora laughed in surprise. "Thank you," she said. The dragon's actions showed more than instinct. He understood her needs. By midday, Leora and Drakkar had formed a rhythm. She would move slowly, and he would follow at the perfect distance. She began to talk to him as if he could understand every word. "We need to be careful here," she said, glancing at the dense trees. "There could be predators nearby." Drakkar's ears twitched, and he made a low rumble in agreement. As they continued, a sudden noise startled Leora. A small group of wolf-like creatures emerged from the underbrush. Their fur was dark, and their eyes glowed with hunger. They froze when they saw Drakkar, and Leora's heart raced. She had not expected such danger. Drakkar stepped forward, his wings lifting slightly in warning. The wolves snarled and advanced, but the dragon's size and presence were intimidating. With a loud roar, Drakkar charged. Leora watched in awe as he moved with incredible speed, his tail sweeping the ground and sending the wolves scattering. One by one, they disappeared into the forest, howling in fear. Leora ran to Drakkar and patted his massive head. "You saved me," she exclaimed. Drakkar let out a soft rumble and lowered his head, as if acknowledging her gratitude. Leora realized that he was not just protecting her because she had helped him. He was choosing to stay by her side. After the encounter, they settled near the stream. Leora took out some dried meat from her bag and offered it to Drakkar. He sniffed it, then took it gently in his claw. She smiled. "You know, I think we make a good team," she said. Drakkar responded with a low, contented rumble. Over the next few days, Leora and Drakkar explored the valley together. She taught him to trust humans more, and he taught her to move safely through the wilderness. She discovered that he could detect hidden dangers, sense changes in the weather, and even find edible plants that she might have missed. One afternoon, as they crossed a shallow river, Leora slipped on a wet rock. Drakkar's reflexes were incredible. He reached out with his claw, catching her before she fell into the water. She clung to him, heart racing, and realized just how much she had come to rely on him. "Thank you, Drakkar," she whispered. He nuzzled her gently, as if to say, "You're safe with me." Their bond grew stronger each day. Leora began to understand Drakkar's moods. When his tail swished slowly, he was calm. When his wings twitched, he sensed danger. She learned to communicate with gestures and soft sounds, and he responded in kind. It was more than friendship. It was a partnership built on trust and respect. But the valley was not without danger. One evening, while resting near a cliff, Leora noticed a plume of smoke rising from the forest below. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew humans lived in small settlements nearby, but smoke usually meant trouble. "We need to check this out," she said to Drakkar. They moved cautiously toward the smoke. As they approached, Leora saw a group of humans with nets and cages, clearly trying to capture one of the forest creatures. Leora's eyes widened. "Poachers," she whispered. She had heard stories about humans who hunted rare creatures for profit, and she knew Drakkar would not let them harm any of the forest animals. Drakkar growled low in his throat, his scales bristling in warning. Leora stayed behind a tree, observing the scene. The poachers were strong, but clumsy. With a sudden roar, Drakkar leaped into the clearing, spreading his wings wide. The humans froze, terrified. One of them tried to throw a spear, but Drakkar caught it with a swift swipe of his tail. Leora ran to help, but she didn't need to. Drakkar moved with precision and strength, driving the poachers away without harming them. The humans fled, leaving their nets and cages behind. Leora watched in awe. Drakkar was not just a protector. He was intelligent, understanding the situation and acting accordingly. When the poachers had gone, Drakkar turned to Leora. She approached him cautiously and patted his snout. "You're amazing," she said softly. Drakkar lowered his head, letting her touch him. It was a moment of pure trust and friendship. Leora realized that the dragon was no longer just a wild creature. He was her companion, her partner, and her protector. Over the next few weeks, Leora continued to explore with Drakkar. They discovered hidden caves filled with sparkling crystals, climbed steep cliffs to watch the sunset, and even found a field of rare flowers that glowed in the moonlight. Each day their bond grew stronger, and Leora learned more about the incredible world around her. One night, as they rested under a star-filled sky, Leora whispered, "I think we're going to have many adventures together, Drakkar." The dragon let out a soft, contented rumble, resting his massive head on the ground near her. Leora felt a sense of peace she had never known before. In the wild, dangerous world around her, she was not alone. She had Drakkar, and together, they could face anything. But Leora also knew that danger would come again. The forest was full of predators, rival dragons, and humans who did not understand the creatures of the world. She would need Drakkar's strength and intelligence, and he would need her courage and wisdom. Together, they were a team unlike any other, human and dragon, bonded by trust, respect, and a shared desire to protect the wild world around them. Days turned into weeks, and Leora grew more confident in her abilities. She learned to move silently through the forest, read the signs of the weather, and identify the tracks of different creatures. Drakkar was always nearby, guiding her when necessary and watching for danger. Their partnership was unspoken but powerful. One morning, while collecting herbs near the stream, Leora noticed unusual tracks in the mud. They were larger than any creature she had seen and fresh. She looked at Drakkar, who tilted his head and growled softly. "Something big is coming," she whispered. "We need to be ready." For the first time, Leora realized that the bond they shared was not just for survival, it was for the challenges ahead. The world outside the valley was vast and unpredictable, and they would face it together. Drakkar was no longer just a dragon she had saved. He was her fierce protector, her friend, and her partner in adventure. As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, Leora felt a deep sense of purpose. She was ready for whatever came next. And with Drakkar by her side, she knew they could face anything, the unknown, the dangerous, and the incredible. The bond between human and dragon had been forged in courage and trust, and it would guide them through the wild forests and beyond. Leora smiled, resting her hand on Drakkar's shimmering scales. Together, they were unstoppable. The forest was alive with sounds of the night, but Leora no longer felt fear. She had Drakkar, and he had her. Together, they were ready for whatever adventures awaited them, no matter how dangerous or extraordinary. The sun rose over the valley, painting the forest in gold and orange. Leora woke to the sound of birds singing and leaves rustling in the gentle morning wind. She stretched and looked beside her. Drakkar's massive head rested near her, his eyes half-closed but alert. "Good morning, Drakkar," she whispered, brushing some dirt off her clothes. The dragon let out a low rumble, almost like a greeting, and nudged her hand gently. Leora smiled. Over the past weeks, they had grown close. Drakkar was no longer just a wild dragon. He was her protector, her friend, and her partner in the dangers that awaited in the forest. That morning, Leora decided to explore beyond the hidden valley. She had heard stories from villagers about a dangerous mountain pass, where even the strongest explorers had struggled. It was said that a giant predator, larger and more powerful than any dragon, roamed those peaks. She knew it was risky, but curiosity and the need to protect her village drove her forward. Drakkar followed silently as they approached the mountains. The forest gave way to rocky terrain, and the air became colder. Leora climbed carefully, using her hands and feet to navigate the steep cliffs. Drakar's powerful wings lifted him effortlessly, and he often paused to check on her, making sure she was safe. "Almost there," she said, panting. Drakar let out a low growl, his senses alert. The wind carried an unusual smell, metallic, sharp, and dangerous. Leora stopped and sniffed the air. She recognized it from stories. Another predator was near. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her feet. Rocks tumbled down the cliffside, and Leora clutched the rough stone to keep her balance. From the shadow of a large rock, a massive creature emerged. It was taller than Drakar, with thick, dark scales that reflected the sunlight. Its eyes glowed red, and long claws scraped the stone as it advanced. Leora froze. Her heart pounded. This was the predator the villagers had warned her about. She knew they were in serious danger. Drakar stepped forward, his wings spreading wide, and let out a deafening roar that echoed through the mountains. The predator stopped, sensing that Drakar was not an easy opponent. Leora quickly assessed the situation. They could not fight this creature head-on. The predator was too strong, too fast, and too dangerous. She needed a plan. "Drakar," she whispered, pointing to a narrow ledge above them. "We need to get higher. Lead me." Drakar understood instantly. With a powerful leap, he launched himself upward, his wings catching the wind. Leora followed, climbing the rocks as fast as she could. The predator growled in frustration, trying to follow, but the ledge was too narrow for its massive body. From their vantage point, Leora could see the valley below, peaceful and unaware of the danger. She took a deep breath and studied the predator. Its movements were precise and calculated. This was not a mindless beast. It was intelligent, and it could track them easily. "We need to outsmart it, Drakar," she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising inside her. Drakar rumbled softly, as if agreeing. Leora's mind raced. She remembered the streams and small caves they had passed on their way up. Perhaps they could use the terrain to their advantage. The predator began to circle the cliff, testing different angles. Leora spotted a narrow overhang that led to a series of jagged rocks above. "That's it," she whispered. "We can use the rocks to trap it." Drakar's eyes followed hers, and he made a low, affirming growl. Carefully, they moved along the ledge, making sure not to make unnecessary noise. Leora dropped small stones strategically, testing the predator's reactions. Each time it reacted, she noted the pattern. The creature was clever, but she was clever too. Together with Drakar, they formed a plan. Suddenly, the predator lunged upward, trying to reach them. Leora's heart skipped a beat. Drakar flapped his wings, creating a gust of wind that unbalanced the predator slightly. Leora seized the moment. She ran toward the overhang, signaling Drakar to follow. They reached the jagged rocks, where a small cave offered temporary shelter. Inside the cave, Leora crouched, catching her breath. Drakar positioned himself at the entrance, his body blocking the path. The predator waited outside, snarling, clearly frustrated by the trap. Leora examined the cave walls. There were loose rocks above, and an idea formed in her mind. "Drakar, help me with this," she said. He tilted his head, understanding her intent. Leora picked up a few heavy stones and placed them carefully above the cave entrance. Drakar used his tail to nudge larger rocks into place. Together, they created a simple but effective trap. When the predator tried to enter the cave, Leora pushed the stones and they tumbled down with a loud crash, blocking the entrance. The predator roared in frustration, unable to get through. Leora's heart raced, but she knew they had gained a temporary advantage. "Good job, Drakar," she whispered, patting his massive head. The dragon rumbled softly, his eyes bright with pride. They had worked together, using brains and strength instead of brute force alone. As the predator retreated, Leora realized that this encounter had taught her something important. The world was full of dangers, but with intelligence, courage, and teamwork, humans and dragons could overcome even the most powerful threats. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. Leora and Dracar climbed to a high cliff to watch. The valley below was calm again, but the memory of the predator lingered in her mind. She knew it would not be the last challenge they faced. "Dracar," she said softly, "we need to be ready for anything. The forest, the mountains, even humans who don't understand the creatures. We have to protect each other." Dracar nudged her gently, a silent promise of loyalty and protection. Night fell, and the forest came alive with sounds of nocturnal creatures. Leora set up a small camp near the cliff's edge, and Dracar curled around her, providing warmth and safety. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing they were a team, and that together they could face whatever dangers came their way. Over the next few days, they continued to explore the mountains. Leora discovered hidden caves filled with sparkling crystals, narrow ledges that offered breathtaking views, and secret paths that led to untouched forests. Each day brought new challenges, and each day their bond grew stronger. One morning, while exploring a narrow canyon, they spotted movement in the distance. A pack of smaller predators was hunting, unaware of their presence. Leora studied the terrain and noticed a series of rocks that could be used to redirect the predators. She signaled Dracar, and together, they guided the pack away from the canyon and into a safe area far from humans. Leora realized that her bond with Dracar gave her a unique advantage. Together, they could outsmart creatures much larger and stronger than themselves. Dracar's strength, intelligence, and loyalty complemented her courage, quick thinking, and knowledge of the forest. But the biggest test was yet to come. News from the village reached her ears. Humans had spotted strange movements in the mountains, possibly the large predator they had faced earlier. Villagers were afraid, and some were preparing to defend themselves. Leora knew it was time to act. She could not let humans and creatures come into conflict. With Dracar by her side, she devised a plan. They would confront the predator before it could reach the village, using the terrain to their advantage and relying on their bond to guide them. Leora's heart raced with anticipation. She had faced danger before, but this would be the ultimate test of her courage and her partnership with Dracar. As they approached the predator's territory, the wind carried a sharp, metallic smell. Dracar's scales bristled, and his eyes glowed in the dim light. Leora clutched his massive claw, drawing strength from their connection. They were ready. The predator emerged from the shadows, larger and more menacing than ever. Its roar shook the mountains, but Leora stood firm. "Dracar, we can do this together," she whispered. The dragon's rumble was a response filled with loyalty and determination. With careful strategy and precise movements, they navigated the rocky terrain, dodging attacks and leading the predator into traps they had prepared. Dracar's speed and strength, combined with Leora's quick thinking, allowed them to stay one step ahead. The predator, despite its power, struggled to match their coordination. Finally, after hours of careful maneuvering, they cornered the predator near a steep cliff. Leora had one final idea. Using rocks and her voice to guide Dracar, they forced the creature to retreat, unable to climb the jagged cliff. With a final roar of frustration, the predator disappeared into the forest below, leaving Leora and Dracar victorious. Leora sank to the ground, exhausted but exhilarated. Dracar curled around her protectively, his eyes shining with pride. They had faced a powerful enemy and survived, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, teamwork, and trust. That night, as they rested under a sky full of stars, Leora realized something important. She and Dracar were no longer just a human and a dragon. They were a team, capable of protecting each other, their home, and the creatures of the forest. Together they could face any danger, no matter how great. The bond they had formed would guide them through the challenges ahead. And while the world was full of predators, humans, and unknown dangers, Leora knew they would face them together, stronger, smarter, and braver than ever. The first light of dawn touched the mountain peaks, casting long shadows across the valley below. Leora stood on a rocky outcrop, watching the sun rise. Dracar's massive body lay coiled beside her, his head resting near her feet. Together, they had survived countless dangers. But Leora knew that the ultimate challenge was still ahead. News had reached her village that the large predator she and Drakkar had confronted earlier was moving closer to human settlements. Villagers were preparing to defend themselves, fearful of the creature's strength and size. Leora knew that brute force alone would not save anyone. Strategy, courage, and trust between her and Drakkar would be key. "We can't let it reach the village," Leora said softly, placing her hand on Drakkar's shimmering scales. "We have to stop it here." Drakkar's eyes glowed with understanding, and he let out a low rumble of agreement. They made their way through the rocky mountain paths, moving carefully and silently. Leora knew every step mattered. The predator could appear at any moment, and the terrain offered both dangers and opportunities. She led Drakkar to a narrow canyon she had scouted earlier, knowing it could serve as a natural trap. As they approached the canyon, the ground trembled beneath them. The predator had sensed them and was moving fast. Leora's heart raced, but she focused on the plan. She had arranged loose boulders and narrow ledges to guide the predator's path. Drakkar's sharp senses would help them anticipate its moves. The predator emerged suddenly, its red eyes glowing with fury. It was larger than ever, its thick scales glinting in the sunlight. It lunged toward them with incredible speed. Drakkar spread his wings and roared, creating a gust of wind that forced the predator slightly off balance. Leora moved quickly, signaling Drakkar to follow the plan. They led the predator through the canyon, weaving between rocks and cliffs. Leora dropped stones strategically, causing small landslides that forced the predator to slow down. Drakkar moved with precision, guiding the predator with nudges of his tail and careful roars. Leora's heart pounded, but she stayed focused. They could not fail, not now, not after everything they had faced together. The predator roared in frustration, but Leora and Drakkar were always one step ahead. She guided Drakkar to a narrow ledge above, where she had set up a simple trap using fallen rocks. With a coordinated effort, Drakkar nudged the boulders into place while Leora guided the predator below. When the creature lunged at them, the rocks fell, blocking its path. The predator growled, trapped but unharmed. Leora approached cautiously, holding her hands out in a gesture of peace. "It's okay," she whispered. "We don't want to hurt you." Drakkar stood beside her, his massive body shielding her, but his eyes showed calm determination. For a moment, the predator froze. Then, with a powerful roar, it turned and ran back into the forest, defeated not by violence but by intelligence and strategy. Leora's heart raced with relief. She had faced the ultimate challenge and succeeded. Drakkar nudged her gently, his eyes bright with pride. Leora laughed softly, hugging his massive head. "We did it, Drakkar. We really did it." The dragon let out a contented rumble, curling around her protectively. Together, they had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the greatest dangers. As they made their way back to the village, Leora noticed that the villagers were gathering near the edge of the forest. They had heard the roars and the commotion and were curious and afraid. When they saw Drakkar, their fear returned. But Leora stepped forward, holding her hands high. "It's okay," she called out. "Drakkar is not a threat. He has helped me protect the forest and us. He is our friend." The villagers watched in amazement as Drakkar lowered his head respectfully, showing no aggression. Leora could see their fear slowly turning into awe. One of the elders stepped forward. "You mean, he has been protecting you?" she asked. Leora nodded. "Yes, we faced dangers together, and he saved me and the forest creatures. He is loyal, intelligent, and brave." The villagers murmured among themselves, realizing that the dragon was not a mindless predator. Leora explained how they had worked together, outsmarting threats, and using strategy rather than force. Drakkar's calm presence and respectful gestures spoke louder than any words. Over the next few days, the village began to change. People learned to respect the dragons and other creatures in the forest. Leora shared her knowledge, teaching them how to coexist with the wildlife rather than fear it. Drakkar became a symbol of strength, intelligence, and loyalty, a protector of both humans and nature. Leora continued to explore the forest with Drakkar. They discovered hidden valleys, secret waterfalls, and fields of rare flowers that glowed under the moonlight. Each adventure strengthened their bond. Leora learned more about Drakkar's behaviors, his instincts, and his remarkable intelligence. In turn, Drakkar seemed to understand her intentions, her emotions, and her courage. One afternoon, while flying over the cliffs, Leora noticed a group of young villagers following her path cautiously. They had come to see Drakkar up close, curious and respectful. Leora landed gently, and Drakkar lowered his massive head, allowing the villagers to observe him without fear. "This is Drakkar," Leora said. "He is not just a dragon. He is a friend, a protector, and a teacher. We can learn from each other if we respect one another." The villagers nodded, awe written on their faces. Children reached out carefully to touch his scales, and Drakkar remained calm, showing that trust could be mutual. As the sun set, painting the sky with colors of orange, pink, and purple, Leora and Drakkar stood atop a high cliff, looking out over the valley. The forest stretched endlessly, filled with life, adventure, and possibilities. Leora felt a deep sense of accomplishment and purpose. She had faced dangers, formed an extraordinary bond, and taught her people a lesson in courage, respect, and partnership. Drakkar nudged her gently, his warm breath brushing her cheek. Leora smiled, feeling the unspoken promise between them. No matter what dangers came, they would face them together. Human and dragon, bonded by trust, courage, and understanding, ready to protect each other and the world around them. That night, under a sky full of stars, Leora and Drakkar rested. The forest was calm, and the air was filled with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Leora realized that the world was vast, full of dangers and wonders alike. But she also knew that with courage, intelligence, and a loyal friend by her side, there was nothing they could not face. The villagers began to see dragons not as threats, but as allies. Stories of Leora and Drakkar spread through the village and beyond. People learned to coexist with the creatures of the forest, understanding that respect and trust were more powerful than fear and aggression. Leora looked up at Drakkar, his scales shimmering in the moonlight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me, for protecting me, and for showing everyone that humans and dragons can be friends." Drakkar let out a soft rumble, curling around her protectively. As the stars twinkled above, Leora knew that this was only the beginning. Adventures awaited, mysteries of the forest still undiscovered, and dangers yet to be faced. But with Drakkar by her side, she was ready for anything. Together, they had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the greatest challenges. And in that moment, Leora understood the greatest lesson of all. True strength was not in fighting alone, but in the bonds we form, the respect we earn, and the courage we show in the face of the unknown. The forest, the mountains, and the skies stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities. Leora and Drakkar stood together, ready for the next adventure, the next challenge, and the next chance to protect the world they loved. Human and dragon, united by bravery and trust, guardians of a wild, beautiful world, and a symbol of hope for all who would come after them.